Thank you, Phyllis. Good morning, everybody. I'm super excited to share something spatial and special with you. So let's dive right in. How many more audio puns and water puns can we have this morning? Let's find out. So what is this spatial audio tidepool thing? Eric and I started a new program here at Virginia Tech to try and bring professionals from around the world, whether they're audio professionals or not, to experience the great things that we're doing with spatial audio at Virginia Tech and at ICAT. We have these amazing facilities, and some great folks that know how to use them. And we're really looking to bring private industry folks that might be touring musicians or working in game audio or other domains that use spatial sound here. We're one of the only places in the world that can offer this kind of program with hands-on, real use of the spaces. And we intentionally made the curriculum accessible for both experts in audio and those that may never done anything. They may have never used audio software. They're just generally interested in it. So the program is intentionally approachable by everyone. And another little note about this program, this model is a way that a department can generate revenue. So why Tidepool? What is this terminology? Would you like to talk about?
Sure. So, first of all, we wanted to have a name that was a little bit distinctive. We could have called it the Spatial Audio Workshop, but lots of people would do that. So the idea of a tide pool is that this sort of nutrient-rich, kind of rarefied environment where many different kinds of species can flourish and interact with each other. And that was our hope for the program, and that's exactly what happened. And I should mention also that we did deliver the first Tidepool experience in June, and we feel that was a success across a few different criteria. First, and this for me personally is the most important one, was everybody had an amazing experience. It really felt unique. Second, there was a considerable amount of diversity in terms of the participation of folks in many different ways. And among other things, as Tanner mentioned, we absolutely designed this as a program that would be attractive to audio professionals in industry. And we did indeed get some impressive audio industry professionals. We also got folks who are working on PhDs in music composition who are interested in spatial music. We also got the writing director at Howard University, a non-specialist who has already through other ICAT programs been very interested in what we're able to do with spatial audio. So that mix of folks was, first of all, a great test of our program. We were very concerned to see if anyone, either our non-specialists, would our non-specialists be lost? Would our audio specialists feel that it didn't go deep enough? But really, everybody was super happy with that. The other thing is, as Tanner mentioned, it generated revenue, and my understanding is that we wound up in the black on this particular project.
So a little bit more about why we're doing it here. If you've ever seen me do a Playdate or talk in general at a conference or something, you've probably seen this like a billion times. So Virginia Tech is unique in that we have almost 10 spatial audio labs, unique facilities where there's a lot of loudspeakers where you can play sounds all around you, overhead, underneath, et cetera. And that's important because a lot of the audience we're targeting is coming from a world where maybe they're just working in stereo. That's what they're used to, and they want to know more about, well, how do I even use this? So our goals are to sort of proliferate these types of spaces in live music venues, in theater, in commercial environments, and help folks know how that they can make great music, they can make great content for these spaces. So the cube is kind of the main one, and you might hear a term HDLA, high density loudspeaker array, and that's a term that was coined at Virginia Tech, indicating 24 loudspeakers or more in one of these systems. And they're special because you can send a different sound to each loudspeaker. And if you make sound, that's very exciting. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff that messes with the mind or creates a realistic environment. Some other uniqueness about Virginia Tech. And I do need to take a quick second to shout out to Brandon Hale, who was part of this. As many of you may know Brandon, but if you don't, Brandon is often behind the scenes making things happen. Brandon is helping Stephen McQuarrie here in the Aspire studio, which is, of course, a Virginia Tech acronym, the acoustic signal processing, blah, blah, blah. But it's a lot of loudspeakers in this room, and Brandon knows how to use it. And he's helping Stephen figure out a problem. And that's really probably the most valuable part about coming to this workshop, the decades of experience between us that can help you get to where you want to go if you're new, or maybe you're trying out something that's bleeding edge that you can't do anywhere else. I'll also point out we had a few industry partners, 2 sponsors, Cycling74, who makes the software Max, it's a programming language, and Sound Particles. So all the participants that came got a free license to those softwares. That I think it might have been a year-long license. Moreover, the workshop was split into 2 parts. The first part, and we'll cover that in just a moment. The first part, if you attended, you were eligible for renewal units for this thing called AVIXA, or the Audiovisual Integrated Experiences Association. And this is a independent body that AV professionals use to have a standardized certification to gain knowledge in the domain. So you can come to our program and get renewal units for that certification. Eric, would you like to talk about our academic partner more?
Yes. Well, so we have one in particular who came out for the Tidepool. His name is Keir Mack, and he's a master instructor and the director of writing at Howard University. The reason that we had that connection is because of a longer three-year long, well, I think it's 2 years, and then we asked for it to be extended, grant from ICTAS and ICAT to develop a partnership with Howard University. And so that involved immersive instruction in immersive audio technologies, and also resulted in both faculty members here going out to Howard, and Howard University faculty members coming to Virginia Tech to provide instruction in various aspects of digital rhetoric. And my partner in that grant was English professor Taisha Thompson. And so the one point I would like to make about this is, while the Tidepool is a single project, I found that in general many different projects at ICAT tend to cross-fertilize, and this would be a good example.
So now we're going to get more into what this thing is and how it worked. I mentioned earlier there's 2 sessions. This is a 6-day program, and you could come for session 1 or 2 or both. Session 1 was more of a instructional session. So in the background video, you see us in the various studio spaces trying to do as much hands-on and listening of resources as we can. So yes, it was sort of classroom-like, but for every session, everybody got up and moved around to hear stuff, or was interacting with an object, or the conversation was such that you're not just sitting in a classroom. We'd make it as hands-on, ears-on as possible. And these days also culminated in a listening session. So maybe you could talk about the listening sessions here in a moment. Here's some highlights, I think for us. We wanted to share some of the highlights from this first session. And you've got to do Keir. That's Keir's quote.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. So Keir had a great time, but he told us that we had ruined stereo for him. just because he had experienced what is capable in an immersive audio environment. And just as a footnote to that, we're very interested in the fact that we have connections with the Torpedo Factory in Alexandria, where we have installed multi-channel systems. And there's also a very interesting immersive audio lab, immersive maybe audio-visual lab on the Alexandria campus that we're very interested in. Yeah, back to you.
Coming up on the background video, you'll see a close-up of several microphones. We got super nerdy getting microphones out. And what you're seeing here is setting up a native ambisonics array. And again, this is all kind of jargony. What's special about all the 3D sound stuff that we're talking about is, yes, there's a lot of loudspeakers in the room to play back the sound, but you can also capture it. And we wanted to start from sort of a physical way of doing that. And we set out a variety of microphone configurations to show how you could do this. You don't need to have crazy fancy equipment. Most of this stuff was invented in the 70s with analog audio engineering stuff that probably most of these folks have or have access to. Next, we're looking at a way of controlling sound in the cube. Some of you may have tried this demonstration before. You'll see Tony Marasco carrying a 3D printed object around with motion capture markers on it. And the idea here is we really want to open up their minds about ways to control sound and control the parameters around sound that are not just knobs or sliders or other things that you might normally see. And that one was a highlight for me. Just every time we do a demonstration with that, the smiles that come out of it, you can't believe the sort of immediate gratification you get by hearing sound follow you around the room just by a simple object. So I think having those physical things to do was not only fun, but also really informed how you could start thinking about maybe you can embody these things as a controller. You can utilize data coming in that's not a traditional control interface.
If I may add to that, since you had mentioned Tony Marasco, one reason that we can do the Tidepool is because we do have world-leading facilities, but another is because since those facilities have been built, we have tried to be as accessible as possible, and we've done that through putting on conferences and festivals. So we put on Seamus, which is the national conference for Society of Electroacoustic Music in the United States. We put on the NIME conference, which is New Interfaces for Musical Expression. We also created a new festival called CubeFest that has brought folks from all around the world. And we regularly have residencies for some of the leading immersive music artists, such as Natasha Barrett, who's considered really maybe the best ambisonics composer in all of Europe. So the reason I responded to Tanner's mentioning Tony Marasco, he's an assistant professor composition and theory at Michigan State University, but he has also been working with Tanner to create an immersive space in that institution. So we've never really wanted to hoard spatial facilities. We've wanted to promote them, and Tanner has actually been involved in assisting with that project.
This is session one, and that's kind of a 9-to-5 deal. Again, at the end of the day, one session is listening to existing spatial audio works that we curated, or had live performers come in and perform a spatial work to get a lot of different perspectives on how these things can sound. Session two is a different beast. We can have about 5 or 6 people at a time do this one. It's a 12-hour marathon where you get 2 to 3 hours a day in each studio. So it's a rapid-fire boot camp of spatial audio going from room to room. And for some of our participants, it's extremely useful just to hear or develop a new work in different but similar spaces to validate your software, to validate your hardware, and make tweaks and know how to change things, because someone like Stephen McQuarrie is doing this every day. He's touring. He's doing quadraphonic sound, audio, video shows in the Bay Area. So extremely valuable to critique your own work in these different spaces. Should we listen or kind of watch and listen to what's going on?
This is Jess Kahn-Potigal, who he's one of our industry participants and a curator of playlists for hotels.
I don't expect anybody to know what you're looking at here, but this is something that's really cool and sort of bleeding edge. We keep saying this ambisonics thing, which is a 3D sound format. And you can see this sphere that's sort of Mercator mapped onto that oval, and that's giving a representation of what the 3D sound is doing. And what Tony is working on in here is something that very few places, maybe a dozen or so around the world, you can do. And that's present 11th order ambisonic spatial audio, which what they learned in the workshop is you need to have 144 loudspeakers for that to work correctly. Otherwise, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So this is a huge limitation to doing this kind of work, but being able to do it, Tony immediately perceived the difference and saw the value in this extremely high resolution audio format, which also informed Michigan State's choice to move forward with their extremely high resolution system. So this is the Mac software that we're looking at, and I think a big highlight from this session is the amount of troubleshooting and figuring out how to make it work in the different spaces was extremely valuable, going from room to room, modifying the code that you see, sometimes modifying the hardware. But fortunately, our systems were such that you could either use our own in-room or bring in your own computer or other devices and play them into our system without a whole lot of trouble. So I think the last thing we'd like to bring up here is, if you liked what you heard and saw, which we didn't hear a whole lot, I guess. It's hard to do spatial sound in a room with not many speakers. We are doing this again in June of 2026. The QR code goes to the website. The registration portal is not live yet. And this year, we would like to aspire to have more international participation. And we'd like to engage more corporate partners directly, which we've already got conversations happening about that. And finally, if you have any ideas after what you've seen and heard today, we would love to hear that in the questions and answers now, or please talk with us later. Thank you.
All right, thanks for sharing. What questions do we have in the room? And of course, if you're online, make sure you use that questions link and we'll get it to you.
As you've been building these spaces and working with these spaces, what is the main limitation that prevents new spaces like these from popping up? Is it just flat cost, or is it complexity of wiring or installation, or what's the big limitation?
I would say 45% cost, 55% policy. I'm saying policy very kind of air quotey. You don't need to have a 6-figure system to do really great stuff, and that's an important point we make here. The technology to do this is accessible. You don't have to have the cube. You can do this with a few loudspeakers in your house, and we go in depth on how you can do that. It's more about understanding the workflows and the types of software that you could use, which we also strive to offer free and as often open source choices as possible. So there is an intention to make it accessible from a cost point of view. I think the big challenge, I say policy, is you may talk to somebody and they'll say, why do you need that? What's the point? And until you get them in a room like the Cube and play them something that opens their ears, it's really hard to argue. I mean, we're talking about sound today. It's kind of ironic, right? How do you show pictures of sound? But until you have someone listen to something in depth in a space like this, I think it's hard to convince them that it can be a need in a lot of cases.
Thank you. What other questions do we have?
Hi. You mentioned that you had a sort of a diversity of types of people from industry and also varying levels of experience with spatial audio. How did you manage that in the instructional and in the studio time when you have people who've never touched spatial audio before, or maybe somebody who's been in it their entire life? It's a really challenging thing in a classroom setting.
Yeah, that's a great question. The instructional piece, as Tanner had mentioned, is both very technical and very experiential. So it in a sense, is a kind of a multimodal form of presentation. And also, as Tanner mentioned, we had a listening session. I think we might have had 2 listening sessions, and some of them involved music that had previously been presented at CubeFest. We also had a music professor, Alan Weinstein, come in and perform a piece of mine for interactive cello and spatial audio. So everybody could experience that. They could ask Alan questions. So we tried to make the educational environment as rich as possible so that there would be something for everybody. And then for the second session, that's a pure project thing. That really would not work, I think, for non-specialists. And I'd also like to once again shout out to Brandon Hale, who was one of our 3 expert tutors who worked directly with the participants to make sure that when they had problems, we could develop on-the-spot solutions for them.
Thanks for your presentation. You're doing great work. I don't have a technical question. More just how much I admire your generosity, but it's more than generosity. It's political. You're making a way of accessing this technology that is really openly inclusive and inviting for others to participate in a creative fashion. And I'm wondering whether you have identified folks of a similar mind in the other spaces around and what you're doing to help people think about what you're doing from this point of view.
Maybe we should both answer that? Yes. What we find is that really everybody we work with is very interested in making this work as accessible as possible. And we didn't even really have to try all that hard to get an interesting mix of people. And as Tanner and I had discussed, we were kind of hoping that people would really vibe on each other. I mean, because some of the most interesting conversations, we heard that, Jas, who's the professional playlist developer, and Kier, who's the director of writing at Howard, they said, yeah, we had a 3-hour conversation last night about what we were doing. So we love that happens, but we find that intentionality is pretty widespread with our partners.
Yeah, thank you for the compliment, Bob. The other thing, I think it's important for us, maybe we don't outwardly say it, but when we compare to, say, private industry training, you can do these kinds of trainings in private industry in a variety of ways, but they're very rote, and this is the information, and this is what you get. Whereas, in academia, and in particular at Virginia Tech, because of our land-grant mission, I think we really try to think about inclusivity and making technology accessible. That's the history of what this school is. So maybe it's not overt in our thinking, but I think we want to, for us, it's fun to have a Kier come who has never looked at audio software in his life and walk out with being an advocate for spatial audio. It's wild. So I would also posit that as a strength for us. And early on I mentioned this can be a revenue generator for a department, which doesn't have to be dirty words. I mean, this is a way that our departments can make money and offer a complementary service that's already existing. It's perhaps more inclusive or accessible.
So I'm going to try and tie a few of these questions together in a very sort of down in the weeds way. So you said that you broke stereo for Kier, right? And you said, oh, you don't need a 6-figure system to be able to do this. How few a number of figures would it take to still break stereo for Kier?
Push up my glasses. There is a formula, n+1 squared, for first order ambisonics, which is one of the standards we talked about. So you need 4. Oh, dollar figures?
Yeah.
$4. I don't know.
Yeah. No,
Go to Goodwill and get.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Yeah, I firmly believe you could go to a thrift store and get some really inexpensive stuff and start doing this kind of work and have it be very effective.
Sorry, just to piggyback off of that, is the challenge then software and if you can get it for $4 at the thrift store, like what's the next? Where do you? I guess I should attend your workshop, but where do you go? Is it you need that ambisonic file format? You need a way to sort of think spatially rather than just like with the 2-channel audio. Is that the limiting factor at that point?
I'll give a brief answer, and I think really we wanted to think about making music or making sound holistically more so than focusing on you need this kit, you need this software, because this has been around for a long time and people have done amazing stuff with nothing. So that's the ethos. You can do this. We also show the whiz-bang super crazy stuff too, but to get everybody on board, this is the ground where you can start. So the bottleneck to me is more about you have something in your mind that you want to execute. How do you get there? How do we enable these folks to get to where they need to go? And sometimes it could be software, sometimes it could be hardware. Comment?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. I would say that also, completely agreeing with Tanner, art is at the absolute center of this. And there is an artistic practice, but the artistic practice is difficult to develop because not everybody will have, let's say, 140 loudspeakers in their home, or even 8. And so cultivating that practice, publicizing it, creating opportunities for artists to come to Virginia Tech and learn what's possible and then very quickly implement. In other words, in a word, building community has really been the underlying theme of many different threads. And in a way, I think part of the reason that the Tidepool could move forward is because we've had other projects like CubeFest. We also had an earlier project called the Spatial Music Workshop that started in 2015, which was very wonderful. It was not a revenue generating model, but basically it was competitive. People would apply for this thing. We'd usually get 30 or 40 people would apply, and then we could accept 4 people into the program. And in fact, while we really enjoyed that, the fact that we could not accommodate as many people as we wanted was one of the underlying reasons that we wanted to try the Tidepool program. But again, ICAT, creativity, arts, and technology. In this case, without the arts, and specifically the creation of immersive audio art, there would be no program.
Thank you. So we are out of time. Thank you so much for sharing your work with everybody. Thank you all for being here this morning. It's going to be a gorgeous weekend. I hope you're going to get outside and enjoy it. we'll be back here next week for more donuts and coffee and more mind-blowing things to think about. So hope we'll see you then. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.